There we go. It's exactly what should be happening. So let's pretend that we get depressed and we decide that we're going to balance out our depression with, I don't know, how about some booze? Crystal meth? I don't care. We'll use an LSD. No, it doesn't matter. So you're trying to make yourself happy with LSD or whatever it is. And it works. But hey, wait a minute. You just put this toxin in your system. So what's going to happen inside your body? Well, your body's going to try to balance it out. It's going to try to go back to a point of neutrality. That's what your body does. So your body reacts to it. Your liver tries to get rid of it. You have select emotional reactions to it. Your body is trying to return back to normal. It wants to be normal all the time. What's wrong with the human body? And that's a good thing. Okay, that's the way the world works. That's the way your body works. So let's say that you're depressed all the time, so you drink all the time, and so you drink all that alcohol, and now you have to clear that stuff from your system. And of course, what part of your body has to clear that out of your system? Your liver, of course. Okay. So now we're having a liver reaction to our problem. Our liver is overworking, and that's a good thing because at least it's getting it out of our body. If it didn't get it out of our body, we would have a really serious problem. We would have toxins in our body, and those toxins would potentially cause abscesses and all kinds of horrible things. Okay. Okay, so let's talk about my niece. My niece, the one I'm going to be talking about, is my sister's youngest child. She's a ice skater. She's an ice dancer, as odd as that sounds. She can ice skate, okay? And that's about it. She's been married 3 times. Her first husband she divorced because she met the coolest guy in the whole wide world. Unfortunately, the coolest guy in the whole, he was a guitar repairman. Isn't that the coolest job in the world? She met somebody that she was madly in love with because he was so cool. Unfortunately, one of the things he did was he used meth. How do I know he used meth? One thing is he shaved his whole body. Who does that? Who shaves all the hair off their body? Well, swimmers do because they don't want that hair, impeding their speed going through the water. But who else does it? Well, the other people that do it are meth heads. I know, what a shock. The reason they do it is because when you use crystal meth, your hair sticks up and it irritates you. It feels like you got stuff crawling around on it. So they shave their arms, they shave their legs, they shave their pubes, they shave their heads, as odd as that sounds. And I didn't have a clue. I'm not part of this whole group. I have no idea what they're doing. But my son tells me, we knew that guy started using meth because he shaved his body. And he shaves his body every day. So my son told me about this stuff. Okay, so this guy shaves his whole body, including his head. So, and I asked him about it. I said, people who use crystal meth, people that use meth shave their bodies. He said, oh no, I just did it to lose weight. And people believe that? I'm sitting there with my mother and we're having this conversation. Of course, my mother is, everything. My mother's 95 years old. She has no clue what's going on. And I'm talking to this guy and I'm going, yeah, right. Okay, you're shaving your hair to lose weight. That is so logical. I can understand that. So from that point forward, I knew he was a meth head. When my mother died, my niece inherited $20,000. And about 2 weeks later, This guy dies of a heart attack. This 39-year-old man dies of a heart attack. Where's the logic in that? He's 39. He also has these really strange cancers. He has cancer of the stomach, but it's on the top of his stomach. I know. He's got all this weird stuff's going on with this guy. And then he dies of a heart attack at 39. Who does that? Well, they said he died of a heart attack. Or at least that's the word that got out to the rest of the family, that he died of a heart attack. What did he really die of? Well, he was using crystal meth. And he was using it on a relatively regular basis. You can do that. It kills you. Eventually it will kill you, but he's only 39 years old. That is not what killed him. What killed him was he got a hold of some cocaine, and he snorted cocaine. So cocaine and crystal meth have about the same reaction, but they're not the same substances. One is natural, one's synthetic. One tends to be stronger than the other. He had lots of money, so he probably bought some pretty good cocaine. It probably wasn't cut down very much. He was living around Chicago, so he probably got a hold of some pretty good cocaine. So when he was snorting cocaine, it's a vasoconstrictor. So it killed him. It shut his heart down and he died. And so he died of a heart attack. In essence, he died of a heart attack. Okay. So what's the probability, and of course she didn't know any of this stuff, what's the probability that she wasn't using something, either crystal meth or whatever? What's the probability? I know. If your husband's doing it and he's the coolest guy like in the whole world, what's the probability you're not doing something too? Right? Yeah. Guess what happened last night? She wrote me an email and said, I've got problems. I've got rheumatoid arthritis, and I've got an autoimmune liver disease. Now, cocaine and crystal meth have to be cleared out of your system somewhere. And of course, what's the way they do it? The liver, of course. And now all of a sudden, she has overstimulated her liver, and now she's got a problem with her liver. Are you getting the picture? So the reality is, no matter what you do to yourself, no matter how cool somebody is, no matter how attractive it is for them to smoke cigarettes and stand in a funny position, you still have to balance that. That tobacco you're taking down into your lungs, your body's going to have to do something to get rid of it. There has to be a balance, and your body will do something. And in the old days, of course, it was emphysema. To balance it out, the lungs would be overstimulated. You get emphysema, which is kind of an autoimmune disease because of the overstimulation. Asthma is another type of problem. So no matter what you do to yourself, you're always going to have a reaction to it. I go out in the cold, I walk for 6 minutes from here to the fob, and my nose starts running. It's my body trying to balance everything, and that's good. In this case, in that case, it's good. In the case of crystal meth, she has to balance, her body's trying to balance that toxin that she's putting in her system. So now she's come down with rheumatoid arthritis and a liver autoimmune disease. Now I can pretend that she has never had a problem, just like my sister is. My sister thinks she's the most perfect child in the whole wide world. But the reality is she has screwed herself up, and now she's probably going to die young, I would imagine. You can't live without a liver. That's and if she's used drugs in the past, they will not transplant her. Why would you transplant somebody that's just going to screw up the liver again? Is going to use it as well? They probably won't transplant her. Okay, so she's got a problem. My point is that there's always something is always balancing something else. All right. So no matter what you do to yourself, you eat too much sugar, you get diabetes. Okay, it's your body trying to correct the toxins that you're putting in your system. Okay. And you can take that one to the bank. It's not my fault. I'm not the one that came up with all these rules. Somebody else did. I'm innocent. It's just the way it works. And doctors, well, the problem is doctors don't talk about this stuff. They don't say, hey, look, you got to stop this. They say you have to stop this for your health. You have to stop smoking for your health. They don't tell you you're going to have a negative reaction. Your body's going to do something to counteract this toxin you're putting in your system. They don't say that, and people don't understand. They don't understand that there's always a reaction to everything that you do. You take an aspirin, you get more stomach juices. You get more acid in your stomach to break down the aspirin you just put in your stomach. So that's the way it works. Your body is trying to, it wants to balance everything. When you're a young pup, like most of you are, when you're a child, when you're an adolescent, you just became an adult. I congratulate you. Your brain just matured. But when you're an adolescent, you can do just about anything you want to yourself and it's not going to hurt you. Because your body is that flexible. And so people will develop a habit, like, oh, I get drunk every weekend, just like me and my buds used to do. You can do this, but by the time you reach into your 30s, all of a sudden your body's not going to be able to bounce back like it used to. And now you've screwed yourself up. Now you've cut 20, 30 years off your life. Hopefully, if you haven't killed yourself in an automobile accident because you're driving around with your buds. So there's always a reaction. There's always an equal reaction to everything that you do. There's always your body trying to balance those toxins you're putting in your system. Your coffee, all that caffeine you're putting in your system. That's okay. Don't worry. It's not that serious. You take an aspirin. Don't worry. It's not that serious. You just get a little bit of extra stomach acids. But you drink alcohol to an excess, now we got a problem. Now your liver has to process all that alcohol. Now that's a problem. Crystal meth. This is not a game. This stuff is poison. You just put that poison in your system. Shoot up with heroin. You get a negative reaction. Your body tries to react to it by shutting things down. And if it shuts down too much, you die. You go into cardiac arrest and die. So there you go. Okay, so the thing to remember is there's always a reaction no matter what you're doing. Whether you're drinking hot chocolate. Is that hot chocolate? That's coffee. That's coffee, okay. It's just caffeine. Caffeine raises your adenosine level and then your body gets more stimulated. But there is a reaction to it, isn't there? There is. Especially if you are sensitive to caffeine. There is a reaction. If you drink it at night, you can't sleep. Right? Is that the way it works? You don't have that problem, you're probably not sensitive to caffeine. People that are really sensitive to caffeine can't sleep. If they drink it, they can't drink it after 6 o'clock or they won't sleep that night. They have a really interrupted sleep. So there's always a reaction to things. This is something that you have to remember. Now some people like opiates. I can take all the opiates in the world, well not fentanyl, but I can take opiates and I don't have any reaction to it. But some people, they have a really severe reaction. So my body doesn't react to opiate, but I can't take ibuprofen, it makes me depressed. So I have to know what something is doing to my own body in order to know what's going to happen. So remember, there's always a reaction to everything, and sometimes it's a negative reaction. We'll pretend it's a negative reaction. Okay. Let me see where I am. And that's really what we're talking about. We talked about this last time. If it ever comes up. The half-lives of all these drugs. It takes 6 half-lives to get rid of a drug out of your system. It takes 6 half-lives. So that's to break down 6 times. So if the half-life is, that's not the right thing. Okay. If the half-life is 12 hours, it's going to take you 3 days to get rid of that stuff. To get it out of your system. But that doesn't mean that it's not going to be detectable. The more fat soluble it is, the more it's going to stay in your system. And this is one of the reasons why you stop having a reaction to THC after about a week. If you smoke today, It has a half-life of, I think it's 15 hours. And it stays in your system for 7 to 10 days. And most of this has to do with the fact that it's fat soluble. So it goes into your fat cells, and it stays there for an extended length of time. So it's detectable after that. All right. We're talking about passive transport and active transport. Passive transport is where it goes very slowly through the membranes, so that the reaction is relatively slow. Morphine has a slow reaction, heroin has a fast reaction. Is that right? Yeah. Morphine has a slow reaction, and heroin has a fast reaction. So if you take morphine, if you shoot up with morphine, dude, the reaction is relatively, it's not immediate. If you shoot up with heroin, it is immediate. It goes right into your system. But morphine is much slower getting into your system. That's passive transport. Active transport takes place when a water-soluble hydrophilic chemical needs to cross the blood-brain barrier. It's much easier for a water-soluble drug to get into your system. Now remember, alcohol is both water-soluble and fat-soluble. So alcohol gets into your system fairly quickly. And it stays in your system for kind of a long time. I mean, it is a liquid that's going through your body, and you're digesting it, and it's going through your kidneys, and you're washing all this stuff out, but it still stays with you for a while. And that's because it's both hydrophilic and lipophilic. The water-soluble chemical must first attach itself to a chemical structure that will readily cross the barrier. What it normally uses, well, in the case of cocaine hydrochloride, it attaches itself to a protein molecule. And this is very common. It uses a protein molecule to cross the blood-brain barrier and get into your brain. Most water-soluble substances, such as antibiotics, will not cross the barrier. They cannot cross the barrier. And this is a good thing. You don't need all those antibiotics in your brain. And for this reason, of course, it's very difficult to treat brain infections. Yeah, well, it gets tough. The blood-brain barrier does not completely develop until the individual is 1 or 2 years old. So this is kind of a problem. If you've got a baby in your belly, in your womb, of course, not your belly, but if you have a baby inside you, then whatever you do, the baby does, unfortunately. So if you take in any toxic chemicals, and this is the reason why the doctor asks you every time you go in for your checkup, as to what you've been taking. And he's very, very careful about what he gives you, because there's 2 reasons. One, he doesn't want to hurt the baby. The other reason is because you can sue his ass off if he gives you something that will cross the blood-brain barrier. So he can't make any mistakes. If he does, then you can sue him. Not only that, but it's a tragedy if he does something to the baby. It's a real tragedy, and he knows that. Most doctors like babies. Well, most pediatric doctors like babies. OB/GYN doctors like babies. The placental barrier protects the developing fetus from water-soluble chemicals, but since most psychoactive substances are fat-soluble, just like alcohol, the fetus uses whatever the mother uses. So if the mother shoots up with heroin, like my great niece did, then now we got a problem, because that heroin's going right to the baby's brain, as is alcohol. And that's what fetal alcohol syndrome is. They've done studies with fetal alcohol syndrome to see what kind of drinking patterns cause the most damage, as odd as that may seem. And it seems that binge drinking is the worst, because they don't have alcohol in their system all the time, but they have a lot of alcohol for 2 or 3 days. That's what binge drinking is all about. So they have a lot of alcohol, and it does a lot of damage for those 1 or 2 days. You have to remember that the baby is growing continually inside the womb, and if they're producing brain cells all the time. Alcohol has an affinity for brain tissue, as odd as that sounds. This is the reason why you don't get swollen feet when you drink a case of beer. Well, maybe you do, but it doesn't go right to your feet, doesn't go to your stomach. Well, it does get into your stomach, but it doesn't really go to your stomach. It goes right to your brain. So you drink that first beer and you can feel it.
you get a little buzz. Then you drink that second beer, you get a bigger buzz. Then you drink that third beer, now you're flying. Now you're ready to take off. Okay. If it does that to you, you can imagine what it's doing to the baby. You've never drawn a blood alcohol test before, but if you pop the top on somebody that's been drinking of a tube of blood, and that person's been drinking, you can smell it in the blood. I used to work with a lady that had done thousands of blood alcohol tests, unfortunately, and she could tell within a couple micrograms what the level of blood alcohol just by sniffing the tube. It was amazing. She was really cool. So I go down and I draw somebody's blood and I'd bring it back and she'd pop the top and she'd go, oh, he's a 1.23, something like that. And then he turned out to be a 1.28. Oh, you're off by 0.005. What's wrong with you? That kind of thing. A lot of fun. She was a fun lady. The body is always trying to rid itself of foreign substances, whether they're harmful or helpful. It does this in two different ways. One is excretion and the other is metabolism. It's winter time, so a lot of people think that if they take a lot of vitamin C or potassium is good for you. Potassium is good for you. But if they take all this stuff in, then possibly they will not have a cold, so they take in a lot of vitamin C. Well, what happens to all that vitamin C you don't need? Your body can only utilize a select amount. So what happens to all the stuff that you don't use? I'm sorry?
The sugar?
No, thank God it doesn't. We'd all be diabetic.
So it wasn't fat?
No, you just excrete it. You just get rid of it. So if you take a vitamin pill in the morning and you eat a fairly balanced diet, you eat your vegetables and you eat your meat and whatnot, then most of the vitamins from your pill, well, you'll just urinate it out. Your kidneys will clean it out of your system and you just pee it right out. Which is a good thing. I mean, you don't want to build up a vitamin C in your body. It'll poison you. Once upon a time, my sister lived in an apartment, and downstairs was a little boy, and he loved a cereal called King Vitamin. I don't think they make it anymore, but back then they did, and it was half of a daily requirement for vitamins, King Vitamin. And he loved King Vitamin cereal. He ate it for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And his parents, of course, couldn't get him to eat anything else, or they were too busy to care whether this kid was eating cereal for every meal. And it's got vitamins. I mean, it's good stuff, and he drinks all that milk with it. I mean, this was good. This was good. He was getting his calcium. He was getting all the vitamins he needed. Well, he ended up in the hospital. He had vitamin poisoning because, well, it had a half of daily requirement of just about everything in it. Unfortunately, one of those vitamins was vitamin B. Vitamin B you don't clear out of your system like that. So you have to be careful as to what vitamin Bs you take into your system and how much. You can poison yourself with the vitamin B complex. There's several vitamin Bs, but they will build up in your system, and that's what happened to him. So they had to bring him into the hospital, this little 3-year-old, and detoxify the kid because he had consumed too many vitamins. It's like he took too many pills or something. But of course he was eating King Vitamins cereal. It wasn't because of him, of course, but it was because there were other children that were eating this cereal, too much of this cereal. And the other thing was it had a lot of sugar in it. If you've ever tasted, chew on your vitamin pills next time you take them and see what it tastes like. There's a taste for you. They don't taste very good. So they had to put a lot of sugar with it. So there's two ways to get rid of it. One is to metabolize it. Your liver gets rid of it. And the other is to excrete it. Your kidneys will clean it out and it will be excreted through your urine. Lindsay Lohan, one of the Disney girls. Okay. When the liver metabolizes alcohol, it breaks down into water and carbon dioxide. And it's excreted from your body in your urinary tract, your sweat, and your lungs. So and of course I worked in an emergency room for years, When somebody comes in drunk, you know it before they get in the door. Usually it's because of their sweat, not because of their breath. Well, maybe a little bit of both. But you know they've been drinking. You know they're drunk because it's coming, you can smell it. Now, if you've been drinking too, usually you can't smell it. You won't notice it. But if you're clean and sober and you've been working in an emergency room all night long, then by God, you can smell it. Oh, jeez, I can stand behind somebody in a line and I can tell how many beers they had. Oh, my goodness gracious. I mean, you know, you learn these things. The liver breaks Valium into 4 metabolites that are actually active in themselves and affect the brain. And this is the reason that Valium, of course, it breaks into those 4 metabolites. So you get those 4 metabolites. Now, a lot of times if you're trying to neutralize Valium, it's really, you have to give them 4 different chemicals in order to neutralize it, because there are 4 metabolites, and you have to neutralize each of those metabolites, and they're all a different chemical structure. But this is the reason that Valium works so well. It relaxes you, and it's because of these 4 metabolites. The reason I have Lindsay Lohan up there is because her drinking she was notorious for her drinking and getting caught. She kept getting in automobile accidents. They found her drunk. Actually, this is a picture of when they found her asleep in her car, and they arrested her for, I can't remember what they arrested her for. Anyway, she was asleep in their car, and they couldn't wake her up, you know. So what do you do with somebody you can't wake up? If you're a cop and you're trying to wake somebody up and they won't wake up, what do you have to do? You have to send them to the hospital just to make sure there's nothing worse. She was just snockered. She had just passed out drunk. And she was on the street, so she was in public. She was public intoxication, I think is what they got her for. Measurement of the metabolism or elimination of a chemical is the half-life. It takes 6 half-lives to break a chemical down so that it isn't detectable. Cocaine, its half-life is 30 to 60 minutes, so it'll stay in your system. It's detectable for about 6 hours. Methadone, 15 to 60 hours, it's detectable for 15 days. THC, 20 to 30 hours, so it's detectable for 5 to 7.5 days. What does this mean? This means that you're breaking down THC. You get stoned when you smoke marijuana. And that's 100%. So within 20 to 30 hours, by the next day, it cuts it in half. You've only got 50% of that stuff in your system. But you've still got 50% of that stuff in your system. Are you inebriated? Are you still stoned? Don't drive when you're stoned. You don't drive very well. You can't see very well. You can't remember things. It's terrible. You drive too slow. Okay. So can you drive the next day? Potentially not. But are you still inebriated? Well, you've got half of however much THC you took into your system, you've got half of it now. Are you, do they count it as being inebriated? I think the answer is no. By that time, the THC level's too low for them to consider you inebriated. But you are. You are impaired. So the next day, you're probably functional. You've got about 25% of that stuff is still in your system. So it's still affecting you, but not very much. You don't have enough in your system to be stoned at this point. But you have enough in your system that you're feeling the loss of it. Now, one of the reasons that people thought that THC wasn't addictive was because it stays in your system for such a long time. And it breaks down so slowly. So they didn't think it was addictive. But the reality is, of course, yeah, it's addictive. But it just stays in your system for a long time.
Do they actually die from overdose of THC?
No.
Or
No.
there's no case of that?
No. You can't die of an overdose of marijuana. You can't die of an overdose of LSD. It takes a micro drop of LSD to get you tripping. But you can drink a gallon of the stuff and you can't trip more than you're tripping. And it really doesn't do anything to your brain except it affects your serotonin level and so it doesn't shut anything down. You just trip.
So you just trip.
You just trip. Yeah. Now the problem with THC is that it affects your memory, your short-term memory. It's really interesting to me. I've talked to a lot of people that have used alcohol and they've used all kinds of drugs, and they talk about it because this was when they were cool. This is when they were the most fun. They had the most fun times. But you hardly ever hear people tell stories about when they were stoned. They tell stories about when they were drunk and they tried to do this or they tried to do that. And they can tell you the story up until the point where they passed out. But they remember that because it was a fun time. And so, you know, you've got a recovered alcoholic, hasn't had a drink for 15 years, and he's still talking about what happened, 15 years ago. Oh, it's 15 years ago, I was at a party and I put a lampshade on my head and I danced around. But you never hear that with people that are stoned. And that's because your short-term memory, it affects your short-term memory. You don't remember a whole lot of stuff. So if you're a pot smoker, then potentially you don't remember a lot of the times that you were having a good time. Or maybe you weren't having a good time. But you don't remember, so it doesn't make any difference. Isn't that weird? Try to talk to somebody about what a good time they had while they were stoned. Anybody, it doesn't really matter. They won't have any stories. And if they have any stories, it's, yeah, I looked at the back of my hand for like an hour and a half, man. I was just like mapping the veins in my hand. It was so cool. It just doesn't happen. Anyway, Prozac, 1 to 6 days. Of course, it takes a long time for you to build up enough Prozac in your system for it to work. It takes about 36 days to get it out of your system. Now, this is really important to me because my wife, they put her on Effexor. I went on a trip to South America and Central America, and I don't know what she was worried about, but she got worried and they gave her Effexor. So they gave her a fairly heavy dosage of Effexor, which is an antidepressant and it's an anti-anxiety drug. So she has been on Effexor for 15 years, and she realized that she was having a negative reaction to it. And the negative reaction she was having was that she couldn't feel things. She couldn't have an emotional reaction to things. It was keeping her from being depressed, but at the same time, she couldn't be happy. Nothing really made her happy. Okay. So she wasn't depressed, but she wasn't anxious, but she didn't worry about things. Okay, so it kind of affected her life. So she's trying to get off of Effexor right now. And the problem is, of course, it takes a long time to get this stuff out of your system. Clearing the system is based on many factors, so none of these factors are absolutes. It all depends on who you are and what you are and how you are, and there are so many different factors. Obviously, I'm not sensitive to opiates. I keep telling you that. Fentanyl, you can knock me out with fentanyl, but it takes twice as much fentanyl to knock me out as it does to knock anybody else out. There was a lady that they did surgery on. There were 2 of them. This doctor ordered fentanyl, and he ordered an excessive amount of fentanyl because he wanted to make sure that they got knocked out. Well, they both died. They're both brain dead. And so they're suing the doctor for giving them too much fentanyl. He must have thought I was the one he was giving the fentanyl to. Anyway, okay, so there's a lot of different factors. As you age, remember I told you when you're a teenager, you don't have to worry about anything. You can get drunk, it's not going to affect you. Your liver's brand new, it's nice and pink. You don't have to worry about things. You haven't put so many toxins in your body that your liver is dying. You can binge drink all you want, and you can stop after 2 or 3 years with very little effect from what you did, potentially. You can do that as a teenager. But as you age, your liver, you put lots of things through your system, and as you age, that cool guy that was really cool in his 20s and 30s, when in his 20s, he's still dancing and he's still going to parties and he's drinking everybody under the table. He's a really cool guy. He gets into his 30s and all of a sudden, it's hard to get up in the morning. It just doesn't work so well. He's got a little pain over here. He's got a little bit of a distended liver. As you age, of course, all this stuff, everything you do to yourself adds up. And if you've done too much
crap to yourself, then you're going to damage yourself, just like my niece. My niece was using crystal meth. Crystal meth accelerates your life. They don't call it speed for nothing. So now she's got two old people diseases. One disease is rheumatoid arthritis. She's too young for rheumatoid arthritis. She's also too young to have liver problems, but she does. She's accelerated things. And now she's going to die young. Everything that you do takes years off your life, no matter how cool you are. And it's usually the cool things that are the things that really damage you. So if you were cool because you were smoking that cigarette and standing there like this, and all the boys went, "Oh my God, you're so beautiful." You bet. Ah, that's me. Okay. Emphysema at 56. Okay. Sad. Okay, so age. Age is one of the things that happens at around age 30. Your liver stops producing enzymes. It produces fewer and fewer enzymes. Doesn't break things down as well. This is one of the reasons why if you find somebody who's a really good alcoholic, they've been a real heavy drinker for an extended length of time, they die in their 30s. Their liver breaks down in their 30s. We had a guy that, he was the cool guy in town, of course. This was Chandler, Oklahoma. And he came in, he was 38 years old, came into our clinic, and I had to do all these tests on him. His brother said, "Just do everything on him, make sure he's okay." Well, he wasn't okay. His liver wasn't functional. His lungs were full of fluid. He had pneumonia. What else was his problem? He had tuberculosis. Everything was shutting down. His kidneys barely worked. He didn't urinate very much anymore, which everybody thought was a pretty good thing because he didn't pee on himself so much, so he didn't stink so bad. But the reality was he was dying, and he had killed himself by shutting his liver down. He was only 38 years old, and he died. He died the next day, actually. We did all this blood work on him, and we did all this stuff, all this torture. We tortured him for the last day of his life. He crawled off someplace with his bottle and drank himself to death. They found him, the fire department found him the next day. He was dead. And the brother tried to sue us because his brother died. All we did was tell him what the guy's problem was. I guess he wanted us to fix it. Anyway, so the more of this stuff that you take into your system, after the age of 30, all bets are off after the age of 30. Your liver doesn't work nearly as well as it did when you were a kid. Now, why would 30 be the cutoff range? What is it about 30? Why isn't it, 100? Why isn't it 50?
Reproductive system?
Okay. Yeah. So you're better reproducing until you reach age. You do more reproducing in your 20s than you do in your 30s. Okay.
Your brain fully developed at 30?
Brain's fully developed about around 24, 25. I think maybe 30. You'll make mistakes, don't worry. Your brain will grow up and you'll just go, "Really? I was so dumb when I was a kid."
Your body's metabolism changes.
It does, and it changes at 30, right? 30. The reality is,
It's like you reach your peak and then it kind of starts going back down.
That's all sad, don't say that.
I feel so old. I just feel like I've reached my peak like yesterday. You're right, unfortunately. In the old days, people only lived into their 20s. They didn't make it through their 30s. They were old by 30. That's evolutionarily. We look back anthropologically. No matter what the population we're dealing with, 30 was about it. I mean, so you didn't need your liver after 30. I mean, there was no Alzheimer's disease back then. There's hardly any Alzheimer's disease in Haiti. But the average life expectancy is in their 20s, 27.3 or something like that.
So they don't live into their 30s, they don't live into their 40s, and they have no old people's diseases. They don't need their livers. And of course, that's the way we have evolved. We can't change the way that our ancestors did things. There's nothing we can do about it. So we optimize ourselves at about 120, but everybody doesn't live to be 120 years old. As a matter of fact, hardly anybody lives to be 120. That's if everything is perfect. They'll live to be about 120. My mother died at 98, and she died of old age. She didn't make it to 100. We wanted her to, but she didn't make it to 100. Her systems shut down. That's as far as she was going to go. She'd really never done anything. She didn't smoke, she didn't drink, she didn't chew tobacco, she didn't, do wild things. She wasn't a wild child. She lived to be 98. So we all have our expiration dates. Some people reach their expiration dates in their 70s. Mickey Mantle. Mickey Mantle was a baseball player in the 1950s and 1960s. Really good baseball player. His father had died of Huntington's disease at 44. So Mickey figured that he wasn't going, and his grandfather and his uncle had died of the same disease. So he didn't figure he's going to make it very far. So he drank. But lo and behold, he had genes from his mother rather than his father. So he didn't develop Huntington's disease. He died of alcohol poisoning. He died of liver disease. He had liver cancer. And he died in his 50s. But he didn't think he was going to make it that far. So he drank a lot. And you can read stories about Mickey and his drinking if you like. But that's the way it works. So age has a lot to do with it. Race has something to do with it. The two races that I'm going to talk about, one race are professional drinkers. They've been drinkers for eons. Europeans, Western civilization. So that Western Civ class that Marius teaches, the first thing they ought to talk about is how they have been drinking since the Egyptians' times. They have beer formulas from Mesopotamia. These Europeans have been doing this for a really, really long time. They are the best drinkers in the world. They're professionals. You guys are amateurs. You've only been doing this for, 400 or 500 years. They've been doing it for thousands of years. Selective breeding, well, not really. What happens is, if everybody's drinking, the people that are really affected by the alcohol drop out of the gene pool. They don't make new babies. But the ones that are really good at it, they make all kinds of babies. So this is a common thread. My niece, the one that has all kinds of interesting problems, she's Polish. Her father is Polish. The Polish people have been drinking really heavy liquor for a long, long time. If you go to a party with, in the old days, they're all too old now. But if you went, I can remember one time we went for Christmas, and we went to my sister's husband's sister's house, and she made us milkshakes, and she put alcohol in the milkshakes, and I'm thinking, oh God, I like milkshake. I love milkshakes. But that was nasty. I mean, she put alcohol in the milk. She put vodka in the milkshake. Who does that? Well, Polish people do, because they don't drink anything unless it's alcoholic, or at least those Polish people didn't. They're professionals. They've been doing this for a really, really long time. In Europe, you can't drink the water. The water's contaminated with sewage. They use all their rivers as sewers. So the Rhine, the Seine, any river you've ever heard of, the Danube. That's one of the reasons why Eastern Europeans drink a lot of alcohol. That's the reason that Western Europeans drink so much alcohol. It's the reason that Scandinavians drink so much alcohol. I wanted to go on one of those river cruises things, but I didn't go because every meal they've got, for breakfast you have screwdrivers, and for lunch you have,
Bloody Marys, and for dinner you have like 3 bottles of wine. So I'm not gonna, I don't drink, you know, I wouldn't go.
When I was in Europe for 3 years. 79, 80, 81, 82. I was there for 4 years. No, I was there for 3 years. Anyway, I used to play soccer. And I didn't drink, but I played soccer. And this one time we played soccer against the French firemen in Metz. And of course they beat us, but I was the best player. And so everybody wanted to toast me. But if they toast you, you have to drink with them. And I don't drink. So they got mad because I didn't drink. I don't know what
I guess they'd never run into anybody that didn't drink before. So they got mad. So here we almost got into this fist fight because I wouldn't drink anything with the Metz firemen. I didn't drink any alcohol. Anyway, okay, so we can talk about Caucasians. Caucasians come from Europe. Europeans are professional drinkers. They don't have any effect on alcohol, but Asians, on the other hand, they metabolize alcohol differently. They have a different genetic structure, and because of that, if you ever drink with somebody from Japan or somebody from China, it's really funny because they'll take that first drink, they'll drink that first beer, or they'll drink that first glass of sake, and they almost get drunk. But what happens is their cheeks just turn cherry red. It's not funny. Well, I guess it is kind of funny. But their cheeks get really, really red. It's really funny. And they get drunk really fast. A lot faster than Americans do. Heredity factors can affect metabolism. Hereditary factors. Some people inherit fewer enzymes. Some people inherit more body fat to store drugs in. Some people inherit a high metabolic rate to help eliminate drugs. A lot of times you'll see really skinny guys with really big guys, and they go up drinking, and they'll both drink about the same amount of alcohol, and the skinny guy is keeping up with the really big guy. Well, how does that happen? Well, the reason he's able to do that is because he has a high metabolic rate. So a lot of times you'll see big fat drunks, and you'll see little bitty skinny drunks. And you think, well, how much alcohol does it take to get him drunk? Well, the reality is, sometimes they have really high metabolic rates. And these are the cool guys. And they're really cool because they can drink a lot of alcohol. Doesn't seem to affect them. Even though they're little bitty short, skinny guys. They have a high metabolic rate. They can eat all the food in the world and they never get fat. They don't put on weight because their metabolic rate is so high. Health can affect your metabolism. Unhealthy people tend to metabolize chemicals slower or less completely. For example, the individual may have severe liver damage due to hepatitis or cirrhosis. That's the case with my niece. My niece's situation is that she has an autoimmune disease in her liver. So her liver is not as functional as it was before. So what's going on with her liver? Is this just a genetic thing? No, nobody else in the family has this hereditary factor. So what's going on with her? Well, what's going on with her is that she used crystal meth, and the crystal meth affected her liver. Now she has a liver that can't metabolize things as well as anybody else. So she's got a problem. She's got a problem because the treatment for rheumatoid arthritis is steroids. But steroids are very destructive to your liver. So her treatment for her rheumatoid arthritis is going to destroy her liver. Now, it's not really going to destroy her liver. Livers don't just like explode and they're not there anymore. They develop cirrhosis, they develop cancer, they develop abscesses, and that's what's going to happen to her. So I told her, you need to do something to build your immune system because you've got an autoimmune reaction. So the question is, will she do something that helps her? She needs to go on a diet. She needs to only drink water. And she needs to go on an exercise program. And that will build her immune system. And that will allow her to live a longer, happier life, potentially. But can she live a happy life without her meth? Can she live a happy life without her booze? That's the question.
And if she can't, she'll die. But she'll die happy, I guess. I don't know. But it's not up to me. It's up to her. You know, I'm a teetotaler. I'm no fun. I've told you, I have 2 wives that said I was the most boring person in the world. I am. I'm a boring person. I don't do any fun things. Except blow my nose every once in a while. Because my nose is running from the cold. Okay. So she's going to either die young, she's going to die young. She's in her 30s, I think. She'll die in the next 10 or 15 years. Or she'll do something that'll allow her to live into her 60s and 70s. But it's up to her. She has to do it. And she has to decide right now. Because if she keeps doing what she was doing, shooting up with meth or smoking meth, I'm not exactly sure how she was ingesting it, and drinking herself under the table, she's just going to die. And there's nothing I can do about it, except talk to her and try to convince her not to do it. But she has to stop right now, because she's doing more and more damage. Remember, crystal meth accelerates your life. That's what she's done. She's accelerated her life. An individual's emotional state changes the effects of drugs. Anger or anxiety in a person using methamphetamines may cause episodes of lashing out or violence. The same thing happens with marijuana. It all depends on your mood. As long as the person was fairly mellow when they started smoking, they'll probably stay mellow. If they're angry when they start smoking, then they probably won't suddenly become mellow. You can't mellow somebody out by having them smoke THC. They will stay angry and they will become violent. It takes away their inhibitions. So they may do something that they wouldn't do otherwise. Okay, so your emotions have something to do with it. It can accelerate the substance into your system. As much fun as that is. Oh, I'm sorry. The next picture is an autopsy picture, so look away if you want to. It's a picture of Marilyn Monroe. Marilyn Monroe poisoned herself. She took, what did she take? Barbiturates, and she drank it down with a bottle of whiskey. And the alcohol, it had a synergistic effect with the barbiturates. It's an autopsy picture. Actually, she looks really good in the picture, but it's an autopsy picture. So please look away if you don't want to see a dead person. The presence of other drugs will delay the metabolism of select drugs. When alcohol is used with Xanax, the Xanax will stay in the body 2 or 3 times longer than normal. This delay of metabolism, of course, an exaggeration of effects, is called drug synergism, and that's exactly what happened with Marilyn Monroe. Not everybody's body chemistry is the same. We can talk about this all day long, that your chemistry is different than my chemistry. Maybe coffee works on you, caffeine doesn't do anything to me. This is why some people are allergic to select drugs and other people aren't allergic to those drugs. Some people lack the enzyme that metabolizes cocaine, so even a small amount in the system will result in an exaggerated reaction and even death. Remember, cocaine is a vasoconstrictor and it shuts down, it closes up all of your blood vessels. Now, usually this is a rush, raises your blood pressure, gives you a feeling of, it gives you a rush. But if it closes them down too much, they collapse and now you're dead. Because, your heart has to keep feeding itself. There are other factors that can affect the metabolism of the psychoactive drug. Your weight, of course, the amount of fat that you have. Most of these are fat soluble, they're lipophilic. So the more weight you have, the more of a reaction potentially that you will have. People will build up a tolerance to drugs, to alcohol, to crystal meth, to heroin. So you have to use more and more and more of this stuff. So it all depends on your tolerance level. Monthly hormonal cycle of a woman. Really? Some people get really irritable with their monthly cycle. Remember that emotion has something to do with how you react to the drugs. So the monthly cycle will change these things. When you are ovulating, you get drunk faster, as interesting as that is. When you're not ovulating, you get drunk slower. So congratulations.
or something. Enzyme induction, enzyme inhibition, the weather. Really, the weather? Sunny day today, go out and have a couple of beers, have no effect. Have 2 or 3 beers. Cloudy days, there's a storm moving in, you have those same 2 or 3 beers, drunk as a skunk. Barometric pressure will force things into your body faster. Yeah. So you think, well, wait a minute, I have this reaction to alcohol, or maybe today I'm more sensitive to alcohol. Well, the reason is because of the weather. As strange as that sounds. So if it's an overcast day, you're going to get drunk faster. If it's a sunny day, you're going to get drunk slower. Just something to think about. This may be one of the reasons why people go to tropical islands to have a good time. Because it's sunny every day. So they can drink a lot of alcohol and have a good time. It slows everything down. Slows down the metabolic or actually it accelerates the metabolic process. So it doesn't stay in your system as well. So you can go to Hawaii and drink, 5 margaritas and everything's fine, or 5 daiquiris. I don't know what you guys are doing. Anyway, and not have a problem. You go to, if you go up to Chicago right now where it's minus 51 degrees, and you decide to drink the cold out of your system, you're going to get drunk almost right away because the barometric pressure is so high, especially if it's snowing. I know, but this cold will change everything, as bizarre as it seems. In order to understand the effects of the psychoactive substances have on the nervous system in general and the central nervous system in particular, we need to review the various nervous systems that control our bodies. There are 2 basic nervous systems that you have. You have the central nervous system, which is your brain and your spinal column, and you have the peripheral nervous system, which is everything else. So those are the 2 nervous systems. The peripheral nervous system collects information and sends it to the central nervous system, which then responds to stimulus back through the peripheral nervous system. The proper response will be through the appropriate system of the body, the nervous system, the skeletal system, endocrine system, digestive system, respiratory system, muscular, circulatory, urinary, lymphatic, and even the integumentary system. Integumentary system is your skin. So your skin has a reaction? Sure it does. If you're cold, your hair follicles stand up. So you have a reaction. You get goosebumps if you're cold, and it warms you up. So potentially, sure, you're going to have a reaction. This is especially true with people who are on crystal meth. Their skin reacts to it. And if they feel like they've got bugs crawling all over them, so they pick at their skin. That's why they have so many sores on their faces and stuff. And they'll just scratch themselves all the time. And a way to fight that is to shave all your hair off. That's why they shave their hair. I know, it's really cute. I like that bald head look. It's really, really nice. They shave their eyebrows. I know, it makes you, I know. We're all tweaking in here. We're all itchy. This is terrible. Psychoactive drugs may alter information headed for the brain. Painkillers block the chemicals that tell the brain that they are in pain, and that's why they work. They block substance P, they block prostaglandins, and this doesn't allow the message to get to the brain. And that's why it works. The pain is still there. Whatever is causing you the pain is still there. But your brain doesn't know it because there is a chemical that has been blocked. And that's why painkillers work. Morphine, the reason opiates work so well is because they make you forget. That's why they give it to you in surgery. They give you morphine because it makes you forget. And you don't remember the pain that you had during the surgery. Which is kind of exciting, unless you wake up during surgery. Which I have the last 3 times I've had surgery. I woke up during surgery. Whoops. The last surgery I had was a heart cath. If you know what a heart cath is, they cut a hole in your leg and they take your femoral artery and they run this garden hose up through your femoral artery down into your heart, and then they look all over your heart. Well, I woke up while they were still in there. I know. I know. Oh, God, just thinking about it makes my shoulder hurt. It's like having a heart attack. You know, they say your arm starts hurting? Well, they've got this hose that's running all the way, up your femoral artery, through your shoulder, down into your heart. Yeah, oh God, it's horrible. And it's your right leg, not your left leg. What's happening? Psychoactive drugs can disrupt messages sent back to the parts of the body when someone is drunk, so that their hands and feet don't work properly. So it blocks that, and you can't, you think that you're walking fine, all of a sudden you fall down, or you try to put your, you try to put your keys in the lock and you can't hit the hole, and you just keep bouncing off and stuff. So then you get in your car, you finally get the car started, you start driving down the road, and you got pinpoint, vision, and you can't see don't have any peripheral vision. Drunk people are a lot of fun on the road. Psychoactive drugs can disrupt thinking. Alcohol, again, does that to your system. Psychoactive drugs may affect an organ when they pass through it, or affect them when the CNS sends back a distorted message. Affects your organ, that's what happened with Crystal Beth and my niece. Because her liver had to metabolize all this stuff, it also affected her liver. While she was on the crystal meth, her liver was non-functional. It wasn't working. So all those toxins were staying in her liver, they were staying in her system. And this is one of the problems with these drugs. These drugs are really destructive. Of course, they make you cool, and they make you have a good time. And so what's more important, life or having a good time? When you're a teenager and your brain's not mature yet, it's having a good time, isn't it? I want to have a good time. I want to be cool to my friends. So you do what your friends do, which is not always the smartest thing in the world. Luckily, I didn't have any friends when I was a child, so I didn't have to act stupid like they did. And some of them are dead. I went to my 50th high school reunion. About a third of my class is gone. They died of all kinds of interesting things. 3 of them committed suicide. They're dead. They're stupid and dead at the same time. They smoked themselves to death, they drank themselves to death, or, they just died. They developed cancers. Why would you develop a cancer? Well, sometimes you just develop cancer and that's the way it works. But sometimes you do stupid things to yourself and then you develop a cancer. My niece will probably die of liver cancer. Probably. She's got an autoimmune disease now. Her system is going to break down. Her liver is going to break down. And she's going to die of cancer. She'll develop a cancer that she can't get rid of, and she'll be dead. And she's only in her 30s. Evolutionary psychologists speculate that any changes to the human form, including the brain, continued because they assisted the individual in their survival. A good example of this is the human affinity for sugar and fat, which provides a quick and more prolonged energy source. So you need to take in fat, you need to take in sugar. If it doesn't break down into sugar, it's not food. That's one of the reasons why we can't chew on trees. We can't break down cellulose. But other animals can. Deer, for example, can eat the bark off of a tree, and it will feed them. If humans do that, it doesn't work. We can't break down the cellulose. So it's not food to us. So we need sugar, we need fat. And this is one of the reasons why you crave potato chips. It's got fat in it. It's also got salt. And your body thinks it needs salt. And it usually does need salt. So you crave potato chips. You put a lot of sugar in your coffee. Maybe you drink it black, I don't know. That's why you do these things. Oh, wait a minute, let me check. Okay. Another example would be the affinity for sexual intercourse for both males and females, which led to offspring which guaranteed the survival of the species.
There are animals that only breed once a season. Wolverines, for example, the males and females don't live anywhere close to each other. Wolverines will kill another wolverine in their territory. So how in the world do they ever breed? Females are a lot bigger than the males. Why in the world do they ever let those males into their territory? It's because of their hormones allows them to breed. And then they breed and then the male takes off real quick. Because if he doesn't, she'll kill him. So he will leave her territory. And their territory is huge. Humans don't do that. We let the males stick around. We hardly ever kill them when they come into our territory. Okay, that's black widows. Okay, this is great stuff. Following the evolutionary premise, psychoactive substances must serve some purpose. One reason may be that most psychoactive substances affect our natural survival mechanisms, but initially cause desirable effects. If you drink alcohol, the first drink you take makes you feel pretty good. It's almost a stimulant, and that's the reason we drink. The problem is it's that second drink. Then it becomes a depressant. It doesn't stimulate anymore. Now we're at the mercy of the people around us, and if they want to kill us, they can. But initially, it's a stimulant. So if you drink a stimulant and then go into battle, you're going to fight better. But if you take that second drink, you're not going to fight very well. So initially, it helps you. It helps your survival. Eventually, as humans may adapt to the effects of these substances, but as for now, these substances are subverting our survival mechanisms, and in many cases, the result is anti-survival. Heroin is a good example. People shoot up with heroin. Or fentanyl. Why in the world are people shooting up with fentanyl? This is an anesthetic. This knocks you out. Why are people taking this for fun? Why would they do that? If you only take a little bit, then you still get the stimulating effect. If you take too much of it, you knock yourself out. If you take a little bit more than you should, you kill yourself. So why are they doing it? For a good time. For a good time. That's what it is. Remember, that first beer makes you pretty. Makes you able to dance. Take that second beer, you don't dance very well, but you think you are. So it hurts your survival. It's anti-survival. Okay. This is too much fun. The human brain not only maintains the largest cerebrum, the new brain, of all the creatures, but it still has those structures of the lower animals, the old brain. As survival became more complex, higher animal forms developed new brain structures to aid them with survival. So if we look at insects they will survive anything. They can survive just about anything. If we have a nuclear war, they will probably survive. Cockroaches will probably survive. And we've already seen that happens. We can irradiate cockroaches and they still survive. Their carapace protects them. We will die. We're too delicate, and we will die. But the insects will live. But of course, their brain structure is primitive. Well, they barely have a brain structure at all. The primitive primal or old brain consists of the brainstem, the cerebellum, the midbrain or mesocortex, and the limbic system. This portion right here, that's the old brain. And there's a reason why people take drugs, because it affects this portion of your brain, your old brain. And we have very little control over our old brain, unfortunately. And of course, or fortunately, because this is what allows our heart to beat and our lungs to breathe in oxygen. And this is all automatic. We don't have to worry about it. We don't have to think about digesting food. Well, all that takes place in your old brain. So it's all this stuff is autonomic or automatic functioning. These brain structures can be found from animals as primitive as fish to humans, of course. They're still in our systems because we need to keep going. But even fish have these structures. The old brain regulates physiological functions, respiration, the brain stem, heartbeat, your brain stem, body temperature, your brain stem again. Hormone release is in your hypothalamus and your pituitary gland, keeping you alive. And movement, of course, is your cerebellum. It's controlled by your cerebellum. The old brain, the limbic system, is the area that acknowledges the experience of basic emotions and cravings. This is where all your emotions come from: fear, anger, hunger, thirst, lust, pain, pleasure. All of these things are messages to you. This is what keeps you moving. If we didn't have any emotions, then potentially we would just sit down and not do anything. We'd not worry about things. Some people worry too much, like my wife did when I was gone to South America and Central America. I was down there for a Fulbright trip. It wasn't like I was down there with the CIA. There's nothing to worry about. As it turned out, of course, when we were in Guatemala, we were the first group to go into Guatemala. The group that came in after us were kidnapped by bandits, and they were held for ransom. As it turned out, eventually they released them because they paid the ransom. They captured these guys about 3 or 4 months later, and they said, well, we had been tracking that first group that came in, but they were too fast for us. They kept moving too fast, so we couldn't get them. After the first group came in, we knew where the second group would be, so they were able to capture the second group, and we were the ones. They were actually following us, but they weren't able to catch us. The other problem was there were more men on the first group than there was in the second. So maybe that had something to do with it too.
I'm such a frightening person. Just looking at me, you think that I'm going to hurt you, right?
Actually, we had some pretty big idiots on that trip. They pretended that nobody would have hurt them. They were carrying their cameras in their hands. They had their purses over their shoulders instead of around their necks. Isn't that dumb? I mean, somebody could just snatch it right out of your hand, right? I mean, these were 35 millimeter cameras. Well, we don't have cameras anymore. This is before telephones took pictures, but they just carried them in their hands. And somebody could have just come by and just grabbed it right out of their hand. That's how dumb they are. I know. I kept telling them, look, put the strap around your neck so that they have to pull your head off to get your camera. Or they have to cut the strap. The old brain is the area that imprints survival memories, specifically the limbic system. I used to trail our group so that I could see what was happening. And I could see the guys looking and tracking us. I watched us. And of course, they knew who I was. I'm an American. I'm also a white guy, and they're all, Central Americans. So I was fairly obvious who I was. But I think it scared them. They knew that somebody was watching that group, so they couldn't attack. I'm a hero. Did I say I was a hero? I'm just kidding. I scare you, right? Don't I scare you? No? Okay. I probably didn't scare them either. I'm sure I didn't. Most psychoactive substances act on the old brain, causing euphoria in this area, and thus providing the euphoric memories that lead to addiction. The emotions of the old brain overpower the reasoning capacity of the cerebrum and lead to the repeated taking of euphoric substances. This is not a logical thing to do. You're putting toxins into your body. Well, why are you doing it? You're doing it for the pleasure that you get, for the positive feelings that you get. All these positive feelings are coming from the old brain. Now, your cerebrum should tell you, don't do it, stupid. You're going to hurt yourself. But your cerebrum cannot overpower these emotions that you get from the old brain. That's what's happening. Crystal meth makes no sense. Logically, you shouldn't do this. Why do you do it? Why would somebody do this? Because it makes them feel good and they get something from it. They're cool, or whatever. She was shooting up with her husband. Her husband was the coolest guy in the world. Didn't have any hair on his whole body. Shaved it all off. How cool is that? So she was trying to be like him. He accepted her more because she was doing what he was doing.
It's also an aphrodisiac in the beginning, but later it ceases to be an aphrodisiac. But we'll talk about that when we talk about uppers. Anyway, strange, isn't it? Why would she do that? She's killed herself. She's going to die young. As hominids advanced over time, more and more brain power was needed to survive. This came to us in the form of cerebrum and highly convoluted neocortex. The new brain aids us in solving the problems of survival. But of course, sometimes we just do what we feel like rather than what we think is the right thing to do. We'll pick this up next time right here. I have to stop right now. So I had a good time today. So.